fact that you have a specialty coffee business and you're able to make money from it is because you're, and all of us are paying shit to farmers. And so like,
Mm,
give some money back, bro. Like, you know what I mean? It's from this
right.
extraction. And so I do like, that's a misconception of like, nonprofits exist to make companies like better or make them look good. And I certainly don't exist for that reason. Maybe some nonprofits do exist for that reason, but we don't all. And so I think that's a bit of a misconception that like we're supposed to be, yeah, making you look better.
The Middle East is the origin of brewed coffee, and now it's also home to one of the world's most dynamic and misunderstood coffee markets. At Map It Forward, we're proud to launch the new direction for the Map It Forward Middle East podcast. New conversations in English exploring the businesses, people, and ideas shaping the future of coffee in the Middle East. You'll hear from values-driven founders, supply chain innovators, and entrepreneurs doing things differently, all with one goal in mind: conspiring to each other's success. Whether you're based in the Middle East or exploring how to bring your business to the region, this podcast offers real conversations that go beyond the headlines. Subscribe now by searching Map It Forward Middle East wherever you get your podcasts. Check the show notes for details. Welcome to the Daily Coffee Pro by Map It Forward, friends. I'm your host, Lee Safar, and this is episode 4 of a 5-part series with Nora from the Chain Collaborative. We are talking about whether the development sector will survive in coffee. And, at this stage of 2025, I am jaded enough to be asking the question if any of us are going to survive, Nora, after this year, because it's not looking good for all of us. And a lot of people say to me, no, it's hyperbole and you're making a big deal out of it. But I'm not sure that I am, to be honest with you. And a lot of really smart people are also asking the same questions. Now, in this episode, we're talking about the myths or misconceptions about the development sector. And I'm sure you hear a lot of them. So what in your understanding are some of the myths of the development sector?
Yeah, gosh. I mean, there's so many, and I think, well, one is kind of this, tendency of people to think that there is a lot of corruption that's sort of taking place within the development sector, and I think it's, the incidents are very isolated. So I guess that's that, or as isolated and as kind of misdeeds are in any other sector. So I think that that's kind of one thing. Um, I think the other misconception, and we can of course talk about the corruption, but one thing that's kind of coming to mind and I haven't been able to talk about in this series yet, I think is this idea too that like nonprofits are somehow supposed to help companies um like make more money. Um because I think that's kind of the, criticism of things like corporate social responsibility, right? Is that, companies are using their good deeds to sell more products and things like this.
Mm,
Um, you know, companies can lie, they can market in ways that are misleading. Um, Consumer behavior is so hard to pinpoint, right?
mm,
And so I do think, in terms of how much money are companies really making from their good deeds versus other companies, how much are they making from their bad deeds, which includes, not paying enough to farmers and things like this. I think that's kind of hard, hard to tell. I think companies are certainly making more money by paying, at least in the coffee sector, paying farmers less than what the price of coffee actually should be and is, and then, sell it, saying, well, we're doing the best thing because we pay more than the market price for this coffee and we do these projects, right? Companies are certainly making more money by, not changing the price that they're really paying and instead doing these sort of cosmetic like projects here and there with nonprofits. They're
mhm.
then just actually paying more, right? They're making more money that way. And so we know that is successful. But I have, like, just as a whole, right? But I have been on calls with companies trying to fundraise, and have they've said to me like, well, what am I getting out of this? What am I getting? And they're saying like, I'm not getting any more customers because we're giving to you. So why should I do this? And I'm always floored by that response, because it's not my job to give you more customers, right? Like, that's the job of your marketing team and you. And you haven't run a sort of like research project to understand what is it that's bringing customers to your door, and whether or not like, do you know what I mean? So it kind of floors me,
Mm.
especially where we give reports and we tell companies like, this is what we're doing with your money, and this is the good that you did, and this is the impact that you had, and they never incorporate it into their marketing. And so I'm like, you can't tell me that we're not, like, you giving to our nonprofit is having no impact, because you're not even using the story, right? You're not leveraging it. So, but there's this
Mm.
idea that like, you just give money and somehow it's going to return to you, and you're going to like, you're going to have more customers. And I just, yeah, and I guess why I think that's like a bit of a misconception, again, like, goes back to like, why do nonprofits exist? And I left that conversation like wanting to say to the guy, well, like, why why do you even think you should be benefiting? Like, you are benefiting, the fact that you have a coffee business, the fact that you have a specialty coffee business and you're able to make money from it, is because you're, and all of us are paying shit to farmers. And so, like,
Mm.
give some money back, bro. Like, you know what I mean? It's from this
Right.
extraction. And so I do, like, that's a misconception of like, nonprofits exist to make companies like better or make them look good. And I certainly don't exist for that reason. Maybe some nonprofits do exist for that reason, but we don't all. And so I think that's a bit of a misconception, that like, we're supposed to be, yeah, making you look better. But I don't know.
If we paid more for coffee, if capitalism was working the way that, trade should have been working, somebody grows something, it costs them a certain amount of money, they sell it to somebody who's then going to make more money off it, but they paid a fair price for it. That system doesn't work. But if that worked, would development work be needed?
I think two things come to mind. One, we need to decouple. In that case, I would think we sort of need to decouple quality from price. The problem with our world and pricing is that like we don't price something based on the cost of production and how much it made, right? It took to make that product. We price things based on how we value them. And how we value them, we're valuing how they're marketed to us. We're valuing what we think they're valued. Like a Gucci bag, I don't know how much that actually costs to make, right? But it's
Neither do
not
I.
what being sold for. But we value that for a certain reason, and
Yeah.
therefore can pay more for it. And so part of what we're valuing in coffee is quality, right? Which is a subjective, but can be kind of sold to us as like, this is quality and this isn't, right? And so, and we value other things like the story behind it and this kind of thing, and those things are sort of subjective. And so my fear is like, okay, if we just pay more for coffee, which coffee are we talking about? Because if we continue to say only quality coffee, the sensory quality coffee is valuable and farmers can be paid for that, then we're going to leave a lot of people behind. And a lot of what I struggle with nonprofit work is actually getting money to invest in farmers who don't have direct relationships and don't have good quality, because buyers want to invest directly in the farmers that they buy from. And I understand that, but there's not this kind of desire to like lift all tides, and so farmers that don't have those direct relationships are left behind and are not able to get their quality to a point where they could have those direct relationships. And so you do have a lot of people left behind. So I would say, you know, if we're just going to pay more for coffee, right, then we need to be reconsidering how we're valuing coffee, and everyone needs to be paid more. I think the other challenge would be in doing that. It's just like coffee doesn't exist in a vacuum. And so genuinely, not that I think that the experiment's not worth it, but I do wonder, like, if you don't pay more for agriculture across the board, are more people going to say, well, coffee is the only thing that's lucrative, so that's what we're going to grow, right? So
Right.
I do think it's more a matter of like across the board, we need to be investing better in agriculture and paying farmers
Mm.
more. But I haven't looked at the whole economic system of pineapple and avocado and all this,
Right.
but I think that's just something to to keep in mind. But I do take issue with people that say, well, we can't invest more money in coffee because then farmers are just going to cut down trees to grow more of it. And in the research I've done, farmers, a lot of farmers are smarter than that, A, but B, it's not cutting down trees also comes from low prices and not just high. And so it's the
Yeah.
volatility in the sector and the lack of the inability to plan that is more the culprit in my mind. And so anyway, going off on a tangent, but
Well,
yeah.
Paul Stewart, from TechnoServe, when he came on the podcast, he's like, you're looking at it wrongly. And most people look at it wrong in the sense that you shouldn't just be looking at the price per pound. You've got to look at the farm as a business. And it's not just the amount that's coming in per pound, but how much is it earning as a business? Can they pay all of their operating expenses as a business? And if they can't, and the price goes down, that's when they start cutting down trees so that they can grow more to earn the same amount that they earned last year.
Yeah.
So paying them less money is causing deforestation just as much as they get excited about wanting to grow to earn more if you're paying them more. And it brings in this whole thing of like autonomy and this idea of like, who the fuck are we to tell a farmer how they should and shouldn't be spending their own money?
Right. Yeah, it goes back to something we were talking about, in an earlier episode, is that there is this sense of like, well, we can't just do a cash transfer, right? And that's what paying more for coffee would amount to, right? And and the idea is, well, farmers are not going to use that effectively. They're not going to invest in sustainability. They're just going to cut down, more trees and more land. And I don't think we've experimented enough with cash transfers to have anything to say about what farmers would do,
Right.
with more money. I mean, there's a lot of evidence about cash transfers that suggests that it has a positive impact. It also suggests that you give farmers things like tools, they can just sell them for cash, and then they can, use that cash as they want. And so you might as well have given a cash transfer. So yeah, I almost, okay, I lost my train of thought there. I'm sorry about that. But yeah, I think
It's okay.
yeah. No,
Go ahead.
I think it's I think it's just valuable to say that we really don't have like any idea what would happen if we have some theories about what happened if we paid more, but I think it's worth the experiment. And one challenge too that is going to come up is what I wanted to say because my train of thought came back, is just that
Mhm.
Profitability is right. Looking at profitability is really what we need to do. And the challenge also when you pay more for coffee is that everyone now knows coffee is more money, right? So input suppliers and people that, are working like in and around like transportation, coffee farms, they're going to start charging more because they know that the farmer maybe has more because there's more for coffee. So
Which is what's happened this year, right?
yeah. So this is why I'm saying like it's the experiment's worth it, right? But it also is the whole system needs to be redesigned in order to have a much greater intended impact. And yeah, we don't coffee industry doesn't seem to have the will to pay more for coffee in the first place, and so I don't think we have the will to change the entire system of the economy. But that's what would be needed, I think.
In our preliminary conversation, you said something that was really interesting, and it lends into this whole myths around nonprofits. But there are a lot of roasters and people who work on the consuming end of the market that want to tell producers how they can make their lives better and where they should be spending their money. And you said to me, we don't tell people how to cup coffee. Leave the development work to the development workers.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, I think the context too for saying that is that, well, I do think there are a lot of development workers who don't share my opinion and do think that they know what is best, for farmers. In my work, we sort of take the stand that we don't know what is best. I think our expertise is supporting, like project planning, developing the monetary evaluation frameworks, aligning this work with strategic visioning. And so we do have that sort of value add, but the idea to the kinds of projects that we invest in might be an alternative income project. Like the idea that I would know what kind of alternative income project is best for your community is laughable. Like I don't know what your local market looks like, right?
You're not a farmer. You're not in agriculture.
Yeah. So for me to say you should do this, like that makes no sense, right? So, but we do have a lot of like companies that will, not a lot. I should say that we have one is enough, right? in this sector, but we have had the situation where, people will say, well, I don't think they should do that. I think they should do something else. And, or they'll say, well, your model just sounds like you're just giving money away. Like, why don't we just give the money to them and we don't need you? And I always say, okay, go for it. Right. And two things happen with that, right? When a company dictates the project and there's not buy-in from the producers, the project, we've seen it's very slow. There's not a lot of engagement. There's not a lot of participation, or there is participation, and that participation is, I'm rejecting this project, and they're telling you how they think about it, which is, I don't care about this project. It wasn't my idea, right? So it's a form of participation, right? But it doesn't go very successfully. And then, or, you have a company that sort of gives money and isn't, engaging or following up in any other way. And then the money gets used for a project maybe not exactly in line with the initial project plan, or, they just don't have any idea what happened and they're having a hard time following up, right? And all of these things will lead companies to say, I don't trust development work, right? And I don't trust farmers to use the money. And I'm like, well, yeah, of course, because the way that you went about it, right? You didn't leave this work to the experts, right, who know what we're doing. And that's why I say when people say we just want to do it ourselves, okay, go for it. You're probably gonna be disappointed. But yeah, I mean, it's and I want to tell them, like, I don't tell you that whenever someone asks me about coffee, I don't buy or sell coffee. I don't cup coffee. Like, if you want to be introduced to one of the groups that we work with, I'm going to make the introduction. And I'm going to let you take it from there, because I'm not going to be able to sell their coffee effectively. That is not my expertise. And I leave that to them, right? But there's a sense of like, companies don't want to leave it to you. They think that they know how to do this work, and and they don't, right? And it's not to say that I think that, like people that work in nonprofits should make decisions for farmers. That's not what I'm saying, because that's not how we go about our work. But I do think that people in nonprofits have kind of expertise with project-based work. And when companies sort of deny that expertise, it creates a lot of friction that's always quite bothersome to me. Yeah. And, but a lot of times companies, they treat nonprofits sometimes same way as farmers. They want you to do their bidding, and
Right.
you can't always do their bidding because what their bidding makes no sense sometimes. So
Is it right to say that nonprofits can be seen as project managers that bring stakeholders together?
yeah, definitely.
Is that right?
Definitely. Yeah, I mean that's pretty good, summary of what a lot of nonprofits do. Yeah.
Because I'm still trying to understand it all. I'm still in that phase. But as this conversation goes on, what I'm getting is that you guys are kind of you bring all the stakeholders together, manage a project, and you're kind of like a safe place for all the stakeholders to come to the table.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's best case scenario, and I think that it changes in terms of who really has power will change to decide which projects get managed and who is the primary on the ground manager, so to speak, who gets to make decisions about strategy and what gets prioritized. That differs by nonprofit to nonprofit, but I think you're absolutely right in terms of it's about bringing stakeholders together for project management. I execute projects and measure the impact of them. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Okay, folks, one episode to go. Will the development sector survive in coffee? Join us for the final episode. Peace, love, and peanut butter. Have an amazing rest of your day. This episode is part of a 5-part series produced by Mapper Forward. Check the full playlist and guest details in the show notes, as well as how you can support our work in the coffee industry. Become a premium YouTube subscriber, explore our Patreon and any brands we've partnered with to bring you this podcast. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. It really does help us grow our audience.